I'm nervous about an animal having a healing reaction during the session and what to do. If the animal has an intense reaction, should we stop? And how do we explain it to the owner? So first of all, I want to say that healing reactions, in my experience, are extremely rare. So I would say in 23 years, I could count on one hand that it happens. Okay. Unfortunately, one time there was a healing reaction. It was when I was doing a demonstration in front of a huge group of people. So that was not good. I was like, oh, and I'm here to make things worse. Welcome. I was doing Reiki for a dog that had that was doing self-mutilation, chewing on his paws, chewing them raw. And so they, during Reiki, it's like it all got fired up. And so he was chewing himself incessantly. And so we were like, what should we do? And we ended up having to stop because he wouldn't leave it alone. And so, so that was like one time, but that happened like once. Most of the times when I've done, seen a healing reaction, it's a respiratory thing. So if I'm working with a cat or a dog in a shelter setting that has kennel cough or an respiratory infection, those look like intense sneezing or coughing, it's like all the phlegm is coming to the surface kind of, but there usually it subsides, so they'll cough for 5 minutes and then they'll go to sleep, and when they wake up they're much better. So it's like it helped everything release. There was one dog that had kennel cough. None of the drugs were responding. He was going downhill and losing weight. So they said, we're going to give him 2 more weeks and then we're going to have to euthanize him because he's not thriving and the drugs aren't working. So I just did one session for this dog. And during the session, when I came to him, he was laying with his head down. He had crust on his nose, but he was just laying there and he had no energy. And I started the session, and about 10 minutes into the session, he started sneezing and coughing, and big like loogies were coming out, and he was wiping his paws and then sneezing again. I mean, it looked really bad, but I know Reiki never causes harm. So in that case, I just stuck with it because he wasn't harming himself. He was just sneezing, right? And after about 5 minutes of 30 sneezes and coughs, he went to sleep. He laid his head down, but he wasn't like this. He was like this. So he laid out much more comfortable and he went to sleep. So I finished the session. I spent about an hour with him. And the next time I went a few days later to the shelter, I thought, oh, I'm going to start with this dog. It was a big Rottweiler. I'm going to start with him. And I went, and he wasn't in his kennel, and there was a note saying out for a walk. So I was like, what? So I went into the shelter director, and she's like, oh, you wouldn't believe, he's so much better. He's going to be ready for adoption really soon. He's eating again. Like, it was just night and day. So that's like, for me, what's been typical. And I've only had a handful of those, a couple with horses, a couple with cats, that one with the dog. So I would say, unless they're harming themselves, like that one particular dog, another one that's similar to the dog that was chewing on himself, horses that crib. It's where they grab the top of a fence and they kind of suck back, and it ruins their neck, and it's breaks their teeth. It's a big mess. It's a neurotic habit they have. Some horses that crib will start cribbing when you do Reiki. Like they only crib at mealtime, but then you do Reiki and they start cribbing. So in those cases, they have a cribbing collar sometimes they put on that keeps them from cribbing. So they would put the collar on before I would do the session because they knew they would otherwise start cribbing. So to try to prevent the animal from harming themselves if you're going to do a session. But that horse that cribbed so badly, within about 5 or 6 weeks, was not cribbing anymore. So over time, really got better. So that's the good news about healing reactions. They're very rare. When they do happen, usually right on the other side of that, you see a big improvement. But it's something you could bring up. I don't think it doesn't happen enough that you necessarily need to always tell everybody that it might happen. But let's say you're working with an animal a cat that has asthma, and they start wheezing during the session, and the person's kind of looking, then you could stop and you could say, oh, here's what's going on. Sometimes as things move back into balance, stuff that has been buried comes to the surface so it can release. So for me, what I'm seeing is that, all this congestion is releasing, and I'm sure by tonight or tomorrow we should see that he's feeling much better or something like that.